advised on its encounter.
There's been another mass shooting in America. This time in a...
Scientists say it's not a matter of if we'll see a volcanic supereruption, but when. And they say we'll have a year to prepare for it, or panic. It'll make the movie Dante's Peak look tame. Unlike ordinary eruptions, supereruptions are catastrophic, real doom and gloom stuff. They can crush continents, trigger ice ages, and end life as we know it. Our planet has seen several in its history. Over the past 2 million years, Yellowstone had 3. By analyzing quartz crystals at the site of a supereruption 760,000 years ago, researchers at Vanderbilt were able to determine the volcano's rim growth rates. Rim growth corresponds with decompression, the beginning of the end. They found the decompression process starts less than a year before it blows. Not that it's any consolation to us.
A rare sight along the South Carolina coast. Twin vortex waterspouts spotted near Hilton Head Island, about 5 miles offshore. These were yesterday morning as you had some thunderstorms that moved through the area. And if you're curious as to how these come together, well, it talks about, well, really comes together with you've got winds moving together, a convergence area. What happens when you have these that come together, they sandwich together at the surface, you'll have this low-level spin that develops. And when that happens, well, guess what? You have, again, pulling that moisture right off the water. It creates a nice little tube for your condensation tube. Look at that. The clouds develop, the warm air rises, and boom, you have the creation of the water spouts.
In a small town, rumors spread fast.
Have you heard these mystery booms?
I have.
Describe what booms you hear here.
The blasting out there at Columbia. There's some mines.
What are they?
They're just loud noises, like booms.
The strange boom has become sort of a legend in Sonora.
It has come from Area 51.
Well, an extraterrestrial phenomenon is one theory. But one man says he has proof that it's something else.
Being much closer, it would have been dangerous.
Glenn White is a local geologist and educator in Sonora. He took this video 100 miles away from Sonora, outside an Army depot in Hawthorne, Nevada.
They go through old munitions, bombs, hand grenades, then they destroy them.
Glenn told ABC 10 his theory last year. Since then, he's been getting a lot of questions on Facebook about it. People as far away as Oakdale, Placerville, and Nevada City have reported the noise.
This is like a war zone every single day in this spot.
5 days a week.
Glenn got special permission to video the explosions. He says that more than a ton of outdated military explosives are blown to smithereens every day, sometime between 11 and 2 p.m. After watching the explosion, he has a theory.
Figured that it's bouncing off is between the stratosphere and the mesosphere.
So according to Glenn, the sound from the explosion is going up into the stratosphere. That is where the air is dense, especially during the summer. That sound then bounces off the stratosphere, sending it back down to Earth over 100 miles away.
I don't know, like ghosts or something carrying out the sound.
Not everyone is a believer, but that's okay. Glenn welcomes skepticism.
A big part of what we're doing in science is support your claim.
Glenn is even hoping to get nearby schools involved in the mystery.
Make it a science project, let them learn about meteorology.
In Sonora, John Bartel, ABC 10 News.
We're already starting to see the impacts of Tropical Storm Darby on the Big Island. Alex Serball is in Hilo with the latest. Alex?
Aloha, Joe. Yeah, first it starts with that high surf advisory, and we're trying to talk about those waves. They're impacting the east side of the island. They're about in the 10 to 15-foot range, according to lifeguards. And just about 5 minutes ago, I was actually going to show you the blue sky that we had, and just exactly at 6 o'clock, it started to pour. It's been just sprinkling. It started off as a light sprinkle, but now it's a little bit heavier. As you guys can see, we are completely drenched. But earlier today, we had a chance to stop by KTA to see if they have enough supplies in stock, to see how busy it was, and a lot of shoppers and employees actually telling us that it was extremely busy. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it means that people are getting the message, and that's exactly what Hawaii County Civil Defense wants. They want people to shelter in place, and they want them to be storm ready.
Pretty much just stocking up on non-perishable stuff. You know, I've got a lot of children, so ice, bottled water, milk.
Only in Colorado, the entire town of Hugo put on alert when THC is found in the water. That's the chemical in marijuana that makes you high.
And the small town is now drinking bottled water. Denver 7 Mark Stewart drove out to the Eastern Plains tonight to get to the bottom of this.
This is the well that's now at the center of both a state and federal investigation. For the moment, there is an officer keeping watch. It's very small, it's very unassuming, yet it supplies water for many of the 700 people who live here. An alert in the small town of Hugo after several tests revealed the water supply tested positive for THC, the active ingredient in marijuana. The scare first surfaced after a local company was testing its own water and got a positive test. The sheriff was then notified, and further testing in other locations also produced positive results. Investigators also tell us they discovered what they describe as tampering at one of the local wells.
At this point, we're not taking anything off the table. Our counterparts with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, as well as the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, we're looking at all angles here, and I can't speak to intent or anything like that.
This could be something deliberate, or it could be a fluke. Investigators stress only 6 of the 10 water samples taken tested positive for THC. As more conclusive testing takes place, people living in the small town are being told not to drink the water.
Safe ice.
At the local bar, red Solo cups, bottles of water, and bags of ice are the new norm until someone can flush out the mystery.
Very bizarre. For everybody.
Bottles of water will soon be delivered to Hugo. A tanker will arrive. Precautions in place as this puzzle is solved. This is considered to be a crime scene. It will be monitored around the clock. Other facilities across Hugo will also be monitored.
Austin, Texas tonight, new video emerging and 2 police officers are under investigation. The video shows one officer and the takedown of a teacher after a traffic stop, and what a second police officer can be heard saying to the teacher when she's put in the cruiser. Here's ABC's Steve Osunsami.
Do not touch me. By no means does this violent takedown of a second-grade teacher speak for the behavior of all police. But what she hears from a second officer in the squad car on the way to jail helps explain why many black Americans don't trust police.
Let me ask you this. Why are so many people afraid of black people? Violent tendencies.
The video is coming to light tonight, a year later.
It is the black community that's being violent. That's why a lot of the white people are afraid, and I don't blame them. There's some guys I look at, I know it's my job to deal with them, and I know it's probably going to go ugly.
Austin police are now looking into the actions of Officer Brian Richter, accused of excessive force, and Patrick Spradlin, whose comments in the cruiser are being called racist.
Put your feet back in the car.
26-year-old Breanne King was stopped for speeding, and it went downhill after she got upset and the first officer lost his cool.
Put your hands behind your back.
He later tells his side of the story.
I didn't want to hit her, man. I was just trying to control her. She swung at me, though.
But she's never seen hitting him in the video.
It concerns me that just one officer has this notion about a whole group of people, a whole community of people that he hasn't met, and he didn't know me.
Authorities are now publicly apologizing.
I'm sorry that you were treated in a manner that is not consistent with the expectations of this police chief.
At the time, Officer Richter's only discipline was counseling and training. Tonight, the police union says the comments in the car are just wrong.
Bro, he ain't broke my phone, bro.
Tonight, we now have the controversial cell phone video showing a family's heated fight with Lee County Sheriff's deputies. The Fort Myers man who recorded the video says officers then confiscated his cell phone and threatened to keep it until he gave them the video. After keeping the phone for 10 days, we're told that deputies finally gave it back. 4 New Corners' Mike Mason broke this story. He's here now live in the studio with the latest. Mike?
Yeah, this family feels deputies used excessive force. The sheriff's office says their officers are the ones who got hurt. Now that we have the video, we're showing it to you so you can decide for yourself.
Police brutality! Police brutality!
Alex Martinez says this video is the reason the Lee County Sheriff's Office confiscated his cell phone.
What was the whole point of keeping my phone for about 10 days, like, for nothing, you know?
It all began on July 11th. Lee County deputies went to Jasmine Aguilar's home in Fort Myers to remove her 2 children. Martinez was there and used his cell phone to record it. Video shows a friend, Waldemar Suarez, became erratic, kicking and hitting one deputy. Martinez kept rolling to show how officers reacted.
Got my hands up, look at that. Hey, Marty, stop that. Hey, Marty, put your hands up, Marty. Now you didn't do no right to do that. You have no right to do that. You have no police brutality. They brushed them. That's what they did. They brushed them. Yeah, they had no right to do that. He didn't do nothing. He didn't do nothing. Why you arresting him? It was him.
After a few minutes, Martinez says one deputy swatted the phone out of his hands.
Bro, he ain't broke my phone, bro.
Shattering the screen. As deputies take Suarez to the cruiser, Martinez suspects they roughed him up.
It looks like they were hitting him or something. And also in the video, you could hear Waldemar out of nowhere say, ow, like he got hit.
He says that's when an officer came back demanding he hand over his cell phone, all without a warrant.
It was my right to be able to record the situation, especially since I wasn't involved.
An attorney we spoke with says it was illegal for the sheriff's office to take the phone without a warrant. At this point, we have no idea whether the sheriff's office was able to access the phone and copy that video.
Now to a story that has continued to develop overnight. Officials in Germany are trying to determine a motive for the deadly shooting rampage in Munich. A teenage gunman opened fire at a crowded restaurant at a shopping mall on Friday, killing 9 people, some of them children, before turning the gun on himself. More than a dozen people were injured in what marks the third most violent attack in Western Europe over the past 8 days. Seth Doan is in Munich with the latest. Seth, good morning.
Absolute chaos that erupted on the street. Good morning. We know that the shooter was an 18-year-old German-Iranian man who grew up here in Munich. He did not have a criminal record, and police have not found any ties to any terrorist groups, including ISIS. It was said, though, that he was getting psychological help.
An eyewitness caught the moment the shooter opened fire outside a Munich McDonald's, sending people fleeing. It's not known why the 18-year-old gunman started firing, but at this point, police believe he was acting alone. The German-Iranian man was heard yelling from the roof of a parking lot, "I'm German." First, I thought someone had thrown firecrackers, this neighbor said. Then I look down and suddenly see someone who shoots into the crowd. 2,300 police from across Germany and Austria responded, and Munich was put on lockdown as hospitals prepared for victims.
We got one of the most critical injured patients because
Dr. Peter Bieberthaler is the head of the trauma department at Reichsthereser Hospital.
We tried to stop the bleeding, but the bleeding was not a problem. In this case, the traumatic brain injury was a problem because there were several bullets right into the brain.
His patient did not survive. The death toll stands at 9 victims. Today, police raids are taking place in the search for clues. This shooting follows a separate incident here in Germany on Monday, when a 17-year-old Afghan asylum seeker wielding a knife and axe wounded 5 people on a train. Islamic State claimed responsibility for that attack.
The gunman killed himself and was found dead just about less than a mile from the scene where we are standing here. He had a backpack filled with ammunition. It is believed that he was obsessed with paying attention to different mass shootings, but Anthony is not known to have had any sort of political affiliation.
CNN has now confirmed the name, and we have a photograph of the man who opened fire and killed 9 people in Munich yesterday. This is the image that we've just received. His photo coming from a German newspaper. Ali Sonboy, 18 years old. Officials say that he is a dual citizen of Germany and Iran. On Friday, German police say that the 18-year-old pulled a handgun out and started shooting at a McDonald's there in central Munich, then moved into a large shopping mall and continued fire. Police have come out and said pretty quickly that they believe he has zero connection to terror groups like ISIS. They ruled that out. They said that he was obsessed with mass shootings and researched Rampage, and that he was bullied. What's your take on what we've learned so far?
Poppy, I agree with the German police. He's probably deranged. Number one, he's an Iranian. They're not engaging in terrorism these days. 18 years old with a pistol who shoots himself. He just doesn't fit the profile of an ISIS terrorist at all. And you know, you look at the filming of this with the iPhones, and he was clearly out of his mind, raving about Turks. So I don't think this was an act of terrorism. I think he was a simple psychopath.
ISIS is claiming responsibility for an attack on a peaceful protest. We now know that more than 60 people were killed and more than 200 wounded. The terror group's media wing says that 2 fighters basically detonated their suicide belts at a Shiite gathering. A journalist who was at the demonstration tells us he saw tens of bodies on the ground, some of them covered in blood, and he saw hundreds of people running from the scene. Senior international correspondent Nick Payne-Walsh joins us live now from Beirut. So, Nick, we know that this was not the Taliban. We know that ISIS has claimed responsibility. When you look at it in context, though, this terror attacks in Kabul, when you look at it in context, is this really the right time for U.S. troops to be reducing their presence in Afghanistan?
A difficult question to ask. Obviously, as we've known, America's longest war in its history no longer has much of a public appetite to be sustained, and that's the reason why we've seen a drop in troop numbers in the past years. There was always a timetable Barack Obama put on the surge he put into Afghanistan, but the reduction that was expected at the end of this year, down to about 4,000 to 5,000, is not going to happen. They'll stay at round about 10,000, and effectively Barack Obama is passing the decision about what to do in Afghanistan on to his successor. Now, the question really is, what could the US do? Well, the 10,000 there are more involved in the counter-terror fight, involved in training the Afghan police and military there, trying to get them up to scratch to the job of securing Afghanistan for themselves. There have been many questions, though, frankly, particularly given the extensive death toll in the past year amongst the Afghan military about how capable they are of securing the country, particularly in the face of a resurgent Taliban. But an instance like this, where you have ISIS so ruthlessly able and desirous of killing civilians massed together in central Kabul in a peaceful demonstration like this, there is not an awful lot, frankly, that you can do to prevent this kind of massacre.
As your president, I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens from the violence and oppression of a hateful foreign ideology. Believe me. And I have to say, as a Republican, it is so nice to hear you cheering for what I just said. Thank you.
Now on first stage performance. T-minus 5 minutes and counting.
There's been another mass shooting in America. This time in a